Probably not. I mean, it depends how you... governments are quite secretive, so I'd probably go along with Edward Snowden's point of view, that the government shouldn't have privileged access to personal information. It's a bit of a trade-off, isn't there? So it's a trade-off between security and personal privacy. So it depends on what side of the fence you sit. Yeah, we have a strong tradition of civil liberties in the UK and in Europe, so it's the whole right to be forgotten is organised around to protect the rights of the individual, isn't it, rather than the state. So we've fought against national identity cards, but national identity cards are the norm, isn't it, in China, Taiwan, and
Germany.
Yeah. And Germany.
Yes. Yes, and there's a limitation basically on these ID cards, so we all have them, but the data behind these cards, and this was a lesson we learned after World War II, or after the Nazi regime basically, is that the data behind it is not centralized. So if the police suspects me that I did something bad and then want to know where I live, they can query basically the cities, where is this person living, and then the cities return them the data. But the police itself, they don't have this data, and not even the state has this data.
I agree. A lot of websites that probably collect as much information as they can about capture personal information, but really, ethically speaking, they shouldn't have, because that data information is irrelevant in your personal transactions. And normally, what I personally would do is, if they ask some field, if they didn't say that's compulsory, I basically just leave it blank.
So it raises the question of relevance, I think, which is in a way relevant to. Again, in a different way to the right to be forgotten. So being forgotten means in a way, means relevant. Yeah, is it still, if somebody commits offence 10 years ago, is it still relevant? If their offence has been spent, is it still relevant for that information to be processed now? Socially, perhaps privacy does a public service. There are some things which we don't want to hear about. It's better to talk in private. There are various kinds of criteria which feed into the judgment as to whether the search results should be removed or not. One of them is the seriousness of the crime. Yeah, it could be a minor crime, could be a more serious crime, but also the prominence of that person in the public eye. The criterion of publicness or prominence or celebrity status or already known to the public seem to feed into, if you're a prominent businessman, if you're a high-ranking official.
Well, I think in the first place, to some extent, yes. But in the end, governments should enforce privacy, so they must ensure that there is no privacy violation. In the end, then courts have to decide, of course. But there should also be, this is the system we have in Germany, independent organizations which basically oversee companies and individuals whether they respect privacy.
Yeah, I think it's individual responsibilities as well to disclose what you want people to know and what you don't want people to know. When you disclose information, you have to think very hard in terms of what is the future consequence.
I think once it's out there, you can't rely on others, can you? You can't control the behaviour of others. So there's certain kind of emergent aspects to it. So I would go back to question 2: is that you need to take a response. People need to perhaps, if they do have concerns about privacy, if they believe in their own freedom, for example, their own autonomy, then they also need to recognise that they have a role in protecting their own privacy.
Well, if I want to have my private things public, why not? I think it should as well be allowed to make my private information public. So if I insist on that, the government should not forbid this to do.
I think that is another issue. So we should have a right. We should care for responsibility. We should have to care for other people. So, for example, I would not post photos of my friends on my Facebook because I have to protect their identity.
The other issue is trust. Do you trust Facebook? Somebody tried to convince me that that Facebook almost lulls you into a sense that it's a private space.
The sad part of it is, from my opinion, that we sometimes have to rely on others. So what you said, that others post annotate my face in pictures, is something I cannot avoid, and which I don't like, but they just do it. I don't even know it, right?
Yeah.
But,
so in a way we have a responsibility for others have responsibility for other people's.
We have responsibility for ourselves and for others, the vice versa. Others have the responsibility for themselves and also for others. They should care for others as well.
Another aspect, of course, that the customers, they are in other countries, so I think their laws should apply. I know that it's difficult to enforce, right? But if I'm living in Germany, I think that Google should adhere to the German privacy laws. Yeah?
I don't think it's practicable to do it on an international level. So you can say one argument is say nationally yes, internationally no. And that's the kind of bit of the fun of it, or the difficulty of it. Yeah. There is no related to the right to be forgotten. There is no universal right to be forgotten. I think part of the problem with this is again the issue that Angela was saying about consent. So there was somebody who gave a talk last, humanitarian, gave a talk last, digital humanitarian they're called, and he gave a talk last summer here at Sheffield, and that was to do with, I think, Haiti, an earthquake in Haiti, and gathering immediately after the disaster, any disaster, collecting information from social media, because people still have their mobile phones, and you can collect and crowdsource the information from that, and sometimes you can through quick analysis of that you can pinpoint where the emergency services need to go. In that kind of situation, you're not going to get consent.
From my perspective, the best option would be if the user could decide. Yeah, so if I could say to Google, well, and I can somehow say, don't store anything about me. Yeah, I just use the search engine as it is, and I'm fine with living without personalization and so on. I'm fine with that. Or I could say you are allowed to use the data, but only for.
But when you when you start using Google search engine, you already give them consent in terms of using.
But that's the topic of consent, which we also discussed, right? Which is a really big topic. So is it really consent? When I have to read 17 pages of terms and conditions and then click yes, is that really informed consent, true, right? Yeah. And even if we agree it is informed consent, then what do I have another option? Yeah.
I think there's a case for providing maybe kind of information literacy, or boiling that down and summarising that stuff in a more digestible form.